Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to George and James. To the book show, where I can speak a lot more than what I can do at Legacy Conversations, so I enjoy it. I have to say, of course, I enjoy Legacy Conversations as well, because then I just have to sit and listen and ask a few questions, which got nothing to do with laziness, it's got everything to do with knowledge. Obviously, the guy speaking at Legacy has very, very expert knowledge on what he's speaking about because he lived through those times, or he studied it in detail. And at George M. James, I have a lot to say because I studied it in detail, even wrote books on it, on whatever subject I choose to speak about. And in my books, I am often mentioning the butchers of Mers-el-Kébir, as we call them. And that's a direct translation, which I've heard some French Marine commandos actually discussing Mers-el-Kébir with a lot of anger. Even 60, 70 years after the incident took place. They still have not forgotten or forgiven the Royal Navy, and especially that imbecile Churchill, for what happened at Mers-el-Kébir. Now, of course, as I said to you in other videos, it really depends from what side you're looking at history. If you are looking at Mers-el-Kébir from the British side, or the Commonwealth side, as most of you would, then you would have a totally different picture of the one which I'm about to paint to you, and which came out in Codename Caribbean. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed writing Codename Caribbean because it was, like all my books, in fact, it was a sincere warning, which was sort of acted upon, sort of, not really, but sort of. And it's something we're waiting to explode. And once it explodes, of course, everybody will be like, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" Well, I can tell you how this happened. You didn't listen. You did not listen to the intelligence we sent to you. And basically, what came down to it is we started. I'm talking maritime terrorism now. I will get to Mers-el-Kébir now. I just have to put everything in context here for you about Codename Caribbean. Basically, what happened was there was an attack, I think, in early 2000, 2005, around about there, on the Taj hotel in India, Mumbai. And these people, one of them was actually a Pakistani American who changed his name. He was behind it. And unlike many, many countries, if you change your name in the US, your new name gets on your passport, which means that there's no way for the authorities, wherever you're going, to check whether you're a terrorist or not, except by biological means, by which I mean either DNA or scanning your eyes, iris, or your fingerprints. Yeah, you can have that, and of course you can do it. That's why you find at most airports these days, they do scan your eyes. They take pictures of you. Of course, it's for counter-terrorism purposes. Of course not. You don't want people to think that you are, as a tourist coming to a country and you are automatically suspect because you're a foreigner and you are perhaps from a country which has every reason in the world to dislike you. I don't want to say that so openly, so I come up with shite like, no, they're scanning you for malaria or whatever, see if your body temperature is a bit higher. No, that might be part of it, but the real reason is something else. And of course, the old camera trick behind the mirror, all those things. Fascinating what you see in bathrooms. But anyway, so there's no trust in the world, and why should there be? I think, we live in the end times. The second beast, that's the US of A of the Bible, will flex its muscles and it will definitely do anything and everything it can to destabilize the world. Why? Because from chaos comes order. Yeah, guess who said that? Jesuit order, yeah, Society of Jesus, one of their plans. which is actually being implemented right now. Of course, if you think I'm a conspiracy theorist, go and read my books. Go and read Oath of Evil, who I mention in every single one of these videos. Why? Simply because it contains the truths directly from the Bible, related to the intelligence world, and to see what's happening today. Because most analysts, well, literally everyone, can only think tactical. They don't know why Trump, daddy, is acting the way he is. They don't understand what's going on. And so they're reacting to it. They do not have the ability to stand back and look at it from a biblical viewpoint. Yeah, well, actually, there's only one church in the world, the Seventh-day Adventist, who can actually do that, who's cracked the code, and who's been warning about this for more than 100 years, 140 years, basically. Fascinating. But anyway, so this attack on the Taj Mahal was not supposed to be on the Taj Mahal on land. These terrorists, and all of them died except one who was been later hanged and executed. All of them were trained by Pakistani Special Forces, ex-Special Forces, I have to say. How ex they are? Well, that reminds me of Air America from the Vietnam era. Or other places like in Ukraine now, where an officer is basically told, look, I think you've got to resign your commission, wink, wink, and then you'll get a high-paying job somewhere else. And then you go and do that, and then you come back and you will still have all your rank, promotions, everything will be done, and you'll probably be paid your salary still in the background. Yeah, so so that's exactly how ex-these Pakistani Special Forces work. Now, a lot of you will, of course, look at contempt of Pakistan military. I don't. I really do not. Got an excellent Air Force, and they've got a good, very, very good Special Forces unit. And it's completely based on the British SAS. So if you think the British SAS is great, then you would probably have to think that Pakistan's one is good as well. But they definitely know whatever they need to know to do the job. Now, these men were originally planning, and they were wanting to, and trained to take a ship. Yes. And the idea was to take the ship and probably block the Suez Channel, or to sail it into a harbor, or blow it up, or whatever. There were lots of ideas there. And I do warn in this book that if you can capture, say, 100,000 tons of LNG, I think that is your liquefied natural gas, if you can capture one of those ships and you can make it to explode, and of course you can, it's not that hard, then that thing will explode with the same force as 55 atomic weapons in the same range as what was used at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, did you know that? European Union. So you allowed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to be blown up, probably by the US. I don't believe a word about this other nonsense of some people on a yacht, but to be honest, it can be done like that, and it's not impossible. But that doesn't matter. The fact is it's blown up, and the fact is you now have to import your gas at vastly more prices and vastly more expensive than before. And idiots, you're running the risk of one of these ships being attacked, taken over, sailed into your harbors, and bye-bye Rotterdam, or bye-bye London, bye-bye whatever. Yeah, you're taking that risk. In fact, I've listened to, again, French naval officers where they said to me straight, if ever such a ship is hijacked and it approaches France, they will sink it. They will blow it up themselves long before it actually can reach France. Now, there's a lot of you, of course, who look down on the French military. I'm not one of them. No. Go and read my books and you will find a different version. What I've seen in Africa anyway, in Sub-Saharan Africa is, well, you wake up and legionnaires are there to ask you what's your problem with life. We were Brits, and the Americans still try to be the diplomatic thing here and there. They want to do combined operations with, say Kenyan forces, or Nigerian, or Niger, or whatever. They want to put, still like in pre-Vietnam, they want to put their special forces in, see if they can train them, whatever. The French just doesn't do that. The French just go in and make an end and come back. That's why they were kicked out. That's why they had to be removed, because they were too effective. Yeah, I'm sure I shock a lot of you now, because all of you, most people I speak to, all they know is white flags, oh, 1940. Ooh. Well, I discussed the betrayal of France many times before. It's also in my books, and especially in Codename Caribbean as well. But I'm not speaking about Codename Caribbean as such here. What I want to speak to you about very briefly is the cover-up of Mers-el-Kébir. Now, many of you wouldn't know what happened at Mers-el-Kébir, so I'll just give you a brief background. And then I'll tell you actually, and we'll go and look and see how it was covered up at that time. The cover-up started already. Because as I explained in a previous video, I found a whole bunch of books, an entire encyclopedia of the Second Great War. I didn't even call it the Second World War at that stage. Obviously, they took the name from the First Great War, which was the First World War. By the way, all these wars, both these wars and the third one, which is still coming, was predicted by Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, his book. I mention it so often, it's also in Oath of Evil. Simply because this guy was like a walking encyclopedia of occultists, of a Satan worshippers, to put it bluntly to you. And he's the one who started saying this, they have to create these wars. And they succeeded, and they will succeed with the third one too. It's a matter of time. They've got their little bloodhound there in the Middle East called Israel, and it's going to stir up until there's a major explosion going to happen. You know, my fear with this is, and I say this to my Jewish friends and my Israeli mates, what will be left of Israel once that is done? And they all come back to me and say, we were chosen, nothing will happen to us, you don't understand. Well, according to the Bible, that chosen story ended. It ended with the stoning of Stephen. That is when the actual faith went over to the Goyen, which is an insulting word, meaning the non-believers, almost like kafir, something like that. The cattle can translate it like that as well. The infidels, and they became Christians. And to become a Christian, of course, you have to accept Jesus. Yeah. And if you don't accept Jesus, there's no place for you in heaven. End of story. So the spiritual children of Abraham these days are the Christians who follow the law, which most of people don't, because you go to church on a Sunday. Why? Why did you change the law? Who the hell are you to change the fourth commandment? What the hell is so special about you? Well, read Oath of Evil. You'll find out this was actually changed by the Catholic system. The first beast of the Bible, who gets his power from a dragon, from Satan. Do I say so? No. Go and read the book of Daniel and go and read the book of Revelations and find out for yourself. Because I know what I'm saying to you is so shocking. I know when I said it, or first heard it, I was like, man, what are you talking about? Of course we go to church on Sunday. We always did. Yeah, you always did, up to about 1,000 years ago. And then you start seeing that these popes and these people, the Antichrist himself, start saying things like, yeah, you can read the Bible from front to back and you will never find any indication that you should go to church on Sunday. We, the Catholic system, did that. It's our mark of authority. Yeah, they say that. I'll quote it for you here since you won't believe me. And guess what then? If they really are in the second beast, or the first beast of the Bible, as revealed and believed by Martin Luther and all the other reformers, and they say this is our mark of authority, well, is that not then the mark of a beast? Is that not the mark of a beast? It's got to be. What else can it be? So if you go to church on a Sunday, my friend, you're carrying the mark of a beast in your forehead, or your thoughts are, because you know this now, I told you, but you decided, hey, this, you'll still carry on bowing down to Rome. Yeah? And then you actually go and do it. That's where it comes out on your hand. But I'm not here to preach to you. I want to speak about Mers-el-Kébir. Now, we have to give some background. In 1939, of course, the Second World War broke out. And there's an alliance between France and the UK. Let's call them England, because England was standing alone in 1940. If a Commonwealth country standing with it, no, we don't count. We in the colonies don't count. India, you don't count, man. Australia, no, man, no, you're nothing. In New Zealand, they shock troops in the war. No, you don't count. No, of course not. No, Canada, no, of course not. Yet you still bow down to the Queen and the King. Yeah, we have to wonder about that. But anyway, India and South Africa at least has kicked the Queen out. So that's a good thing. At least we got the man to do so. You don't. Shame. So anyway, so the war breaks out, and there's a bit of what they call the silent war, or whatever they called it. In the beginning, nothing much happened. It was more like a few bombing raids. There was something happening in the east, where the Soviet Union was attacking, I think, Finland or something, or the Manaram line, things going on like that. And so forth. And Finland, of course, would later then change and become fighting with the Nazis. Have you forgotten about that, Finland? Because we didn't. We still remember that betrayal. Yes, we do. And at that stage, of course, was Winston Churchill, and go and look at the video I made of Churchill. It's an hour and a half of truths, which many people will find extremely insulting to the hero of the Brits. But again, I say to you, it depends on where you come from. It really depends on where you come from. So, so anyway, the Winter War, all those things, the imbecile wanted to send divisions to go and help the France against the Soviet Union. Oh, that would have turned out wonderful, wouldn't it? Because what would have happened then? What would have happened if the Soviet Union was not in a war with Nazi Germany? Then that 75-80% of the fighting which took place in the World War II would have been taking place in France. And, well, I think everybody would be speaking German now. Sie sprachen sie Deutsch. Yeah, you would have been speaking German like your royal family. How many times do I have to tell you, Brits? Your royal family ain't British. No, they German, Yeah, that's what they are. They German. And yet you don't seem to realize that. It's amazing to me. Also that they sold out the crown, the British crown to Rome, to the Catholics. They sold that out at 3 inches. Yeah, do you know about that? The compromise of the Frenches. No, you don't. Obviously not. Never met a Brit who could tell me what happened there. Yeah, well, again, go and read Hope of Evil. You'll find out. Perhaps code name Rebecca 65 might be dealing with it. Swan 53. Why more than one book? Because, guys, when you write more than 50 books in a series, you have no clue who's going to read which book. And when there's an important message, you have to repeat it, which is why sometimes it repeats in different books. And since not a lot of people read the books, I can get away with it as an author. But I've had people say to me, oh, of course it repeats. Yeah, there's reasons why I do that. There's not a word written in my books without me having approved it first. I mean, I guarantee you. That's like that with all authors. And everybody who makes a movie or who makes a little clip like this, we put in what we think we want you to hear. So you have to be skeptical about it, especially about history as well. So anyway, so France was then basically betrayed, I say, by the Brits. They ran away through Dunkirk and other ports. The agreement with the French government was that you will come back and fight. And they didn't mean 4 years later on the command of of a colonel at that stage in 1940, that is Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, later a general, of course, and president. No, we thought the Brits would actually come back right immediately as the French did, because the French army was holding the rear action for the Brits to actually run away at Dunkirk, and then they ran so quickly they lost all their heavy arms and most of their rifles too. I mean, they threw that away too, and then they ran so fast. And it was a flippant disgrace of note. And then, of course, they started spinning the propaganda, where they started talking about the small vessels who went and fetched the men. Well, you know what? Less than 1 or 2% of the men actually went out like that. Nothing really. Most of the people actually left in the harbor on ships, proper ships. Yeah. And then the French who went with him, where the French army was also evacuated, they went back to France immediately within days. And they got back to France and kept on fighting. And the Brits, I need to repeat myself. Well, yeah, because I don't know which one of the videos you've seen. So I have to say to you, I've stock shame. No, they stayed behind. Yeah, they stayed behind. No, they had no intention of going. Churchill then went over to France and he tried in his very bad French, worse than mine actually. He then tried to tell them that Britain will send him a couple of squadrons of Hurricane fighters to assist him. Now the word was said about the British Army, insignificant and pathetic as they were, and still are today. Actually, they worse today, because you know what, in 1945, the British Army was actually quite good. I mean, there were a lot of them, and they were experienced. They were fighting, not a lot of fighting, but they were fighting, and they could take care of themselves. And definitely on that commanders like Montgomery, they could do very well. I think of Horrocks too. You know, I think of 30th Corps Armor. You know, they had good combat generals, no doubt. But today, yeah, tell me, little chihuahuas, how are you going to take on Russia? Tell me, I want to know. Tell me. I can fetch your entire military in Wembley Stadium and still have half of it left open. Yeah. Which army again? Let me say this again because I don't know what video you've seen. I really like this part actually because I have a great dislike in the Brits. Tell me, you have more horses than tanks, right? Yeah. Yes, that's true. You have more horses than tanks. Yeah, pathetic, ain't it? And yet you walk around as if you were a roaring lion of the empire still. Do you realize that Russia can recall, if they want to call up 10 million men in reserves, equip and fight with you? Do you know that China can call up more than that, more than 10 million? Do you get that? And here comes you, all 75,000. It reminds me of a Monty Python show, you know, that one where, what's that, Sir Galahad or what's the idiot called? Where he's fighting the dragon and he's lost both arms and both legs. And, oh man, it's just a flesh wound, no problem, come on, I'll show you. Let's hope that you never actually had to show anybody because you ain't what you were. Really, you're nothing. You don't have a navy left either. It's pathetic. The navy is gone. You have aircraft carriers without aircraft. You have no escort vessels. Shame. You basically have no submarines operating. Most of them are in harbor. We know that too. And your Air Force, well, you know, once it was so good. There's a part of me where I actually feel sorry for you, and then I remember the concentration camps of the Boer War, which I will never forget to remind you about. You know, that's where it started, right? That's where this idea of concentrating people in concentration camps and killing them by starvation and disease, even if it probably wasn't on purpose, but you're still responsible for that. Yeah, you did it. What's it? 1/3 of our people died there. Yeah, okay, so let's go back to 1940 then. Fascinating to me is how history got changed. And you'll see what happens just now. So Churchill is now in command, and Churchill is now really begging, like he's on his knees with America. He wants his cousins across the ocean to come and help, across the pond, which is Atlantic. But sadly for him is that the cousins are not that interested in helping them because there's a huge movement in America, or which I mean now the second beast, the US of A, against this war and getting involved with it because they felt they got hard done by in the First World War, which is why you hardly find any memorials or anything about the First World War, the First Great War in the US. It is just not there. They don't consider it as something of importance. And if you ask the average American about the First World War, he's got no clue, man. He might know about the Zimmerman telegram, but even that I doubt. No, I doubt that too. And so they don't want to get involved. And in fact, one of Roosevelt's campaign promises was that he will never get involved in the war that side. And he's also not going to give any credit to the warring nations. If they want weapons and arms factories to give him something, then of course they have to pay for it in cold hard cash. Gentlemen, is history not repeating today? What does this Daddy Trump say to NATO? Yeah, we will supply you arms and you pay us for it, and then you can go and give it to Ukraine. See, history repeating. Fascinating these things, huh? And so they didn't really want to assist. But Britain is now in deep trouble because they lost the French, and especially the French army. Now, yeah, I know a lot of you will now go on, oh, the white flags, oh, the reverse gears on a French tank, oh, the rifles which are being dropped. I wonder who's the ones who ran away to Dunkirk and other places and broke the line. I wonder. I wonder who suffered virtually no casualties in World War II. That's you, Britain, as well as the Americans suffered virtually no casualties. No, of course we regret the death of any person. I don't make light of those who died and suffered because of war, which must be blamed on who? Politicians, the Third Brigade. They float in what they talk, and they are smelly little things too. Ask me, I had quite a few as clients when I was still in law. Yeah, not the type of people you want to be friends with. But anyway, I made an episode on that as well. You can go and look at the strange lack of British military casualties in World War II. In fact, France lost more men in the 6 weeks of fighting in 1940. These are facts. Than Britain lost in 6 years of fighting. Is that sinking in, Brit? Do you hear me, you pommy bastard? Do you understand what I'm saying to you now? You were running away so fast and quickly that you couldn't be killed. And then, of course, when you got back to France, there were about 38 or 48 Canadians and Americans for every one of you. That's a way of fighting, by the way, guys. That's how they do it. They always get Big Daddy or somebody else to come and fight on their behalf. What about North Africa? Tell me about North Africa. Who were there? Indian Army, great fighters. They were there in massa. The South Africans were there. Bit smaller, but still great fighters. Australians, brawny bastards, really. I recall my uncles on my dad's side coming back. They were old by that time when I met them, of course, and said, because you never attack an Australian soldier because he and his mates will come back and they will F you up, Tough, brawny lads. New Zealanders, rated by Montgomery and the rest of his brigade generals as the best fighters, best shock troops in the entire war. They were all there. They were fighting, and then there were, of course, the Brits. Yeah. Mm. And then what happened at Tobruk? When Tobruk fell and South African division had to surrender. Well, the armor fled. The British armor went right past Tobruk all the way back to Egypt. And when that happened and there were no defenseless left, yes, order came to surrender. Why do I know about it? Well, I had an uncle who won the military cross where he let his people help. Yeah, he escaped with his men. He later went on and became something else, which is sort of revealed in the books. Yeah, interesting, these Brits. But anyway, so Britain is now standing alone. Let me roll my eyes, toch. They were not alone, but anyway, and now we're begging Big Brother to come and help them and assist them. And they have a big problem here because the Americans are not convinced that they're going to survive this. As far as they are concerned, and the rest of the world is Britain has lost this war. It's over. Because if you can destroy the French army in a few weeks, in say 2 months, then what the hell is the Brits who ran away at the first sight of any German? What the hell are they going to do? Now, this might again sound strange to you, but at that stage, the French army was the army. It's very much like the American army today, when in our generation. If there's a combined operation anywhere, then of course the the American general would be in charge. It is pro forma. There's no one else because they are the very best you've ever seen in your life. Of course, they're not even close. Read my book, American Military Might Debunked, written in 2017 already. Where I started warning you ain't as good as you think you are. You are lacking on every single technology arms and you're going to lose the next war. I kept on warning. Why? Because I saw it. We were actually surprised. I grew up with thinking, well, NATO is NATO, man. We're going to see. Let those Warsaw Pact countries come. There's a lot of them, but they don't have the quality to them. There's no quality there. So we will win. Yeah, we believe that. And then I started operating with these people, started observing them. And I quickly realized these are pieces of. They can't keep their little pricks in their pants in the first place. Wherever they go, they just kill, rape, and murder. Yeah, that's all they do. And by doing that, they cause more and more terrorism, and we just couldn't figure it out. At first, I thought, well, they can't be that bad. This must be part of a bigger plan. But then I realized, no, they really are that bad. They really are. It was a shocking moment. It was dreadful. And then, of course, when I started writing these books and we started doing the research and we started accessing certain things, and I started warning in all the books. I started warning, guys, you're on the wrong road. Guys, you're going to lose this fight. You live in a bubble. You live in a world where you think you're the best and the greatest and you're just wonderful. Well, guess what, guys? You're not. And I'm not the only one saying that. There are people like Colonel McGregor. There are people like Larry Johnson, the CIA analyst. There are many of these people. I quote them in my books. All are brave people. They're standing up and they're Americans. They're patriots. Which I'm not. Of course, I feel nothing for you. I'm not an American. Why would I care about you? But I do care because actually, my late wife was an American and a patriot, and my current wife's an American as well. So yeah, I do care. We do go back, but it's not my fight. Yet we warn you, and yet you don't listen. So you're gonna feel it one day, and then I don't care anymore. Let me put it like that. I'm like positively neutral. Positively neutral is the intelligence concept where basically you say, even if I have intelligence which I can share with you, I'm not going to do it because I don't like you or I don't care what happens to you. It is the worst thing where you can be. You're not anti, but you're not positive either. So you just walk past. It's like, yeah, I can see there's a drug deal going on. Yeah, I just walk past, not my problem. Okay, I can see there's a terrorist attack being planned or being executed. I'm capable of taking it out, preventing it, but I'm not going to do it. That is positively neutral. It is the worst thing you can have against you because that means you've lost the population. And that means once that happens, take your things, piss off home, and try again somewhere else, because you've lost the war. And I don't know when the US has last won a war anyway. I can't even remember. I think probably against Spain with Cuba and the Philippines, which they stole at what 1890s, around about the 1900s. Yeah, so unimportant, no one cares. But anyway, to make a long story short, so Churchill has to impress America that Britain still has a fighting spirit, and they still have a Royal Navy. And yeah, they had a very good and big Royal Navy at that stage. And they have RAF, but it's a local RAF. They're fighting there around Britain, Battle of Britain. And yes, they're bombing Berlin. And do you know something? Let me touch that subject too. Tell me, you Brit, and the rest of you who don't know history. Tell me, who bombed first in the Second World War? Who was the people who actually bombed the city first? An undefended city, you will say, of course. And if you know something, you will say to me, oh, it was the Nazis, it was the Luftwaffe from Rotterdam. Well, I have flipping news for you. The Soviet Air Force actually bombed something in the Chihuahua countries before that. Yeah, there you go. And then secondly, tell me, did Hitler attack London first or did the RAF attack Berlin first? Tell me, I want to know. Come, tell me, Brett. It's a funny thing. I walk around here. Just yesterday I went for a swim here on Patong Beach. And as you swim, you listen to people talking next to you because I'm alone there in the water. I don't bother with them. But I listen. I hear what they're speaking, what language, what they say, what they don't say, and so forth. And so I can hear the Americans, thank God, not a lot of them here. And I can hear a few Pommies, and they're all really strange people. That tattoo brigade. And I can hear them speaking, and sometimes they speak of current affairs, and the lack of knowledge is just flipping astonishing. It's astonishing. It reminds me of what the Bible says in Afrikaans. Wat dit het sê, my volk gaan ten gronde as gevolg van 'n gebrek aan kennis. Yeah, true. People are going the wrong way because of a lack of knowledge. And most of you, of course, will say to me that the Luftwaffe attacked London first and it was a blitz and we could take it. In fact, if we read the MI5 reports of those days, you couldn't take it. You were pissing. In fact, there was almost a revolt going on. In fact, it even came out, if you read David Irving, who's accused of being a Holocaust denier, whether he is or not, is besides the point. But in his books, he mentions that Churchill was actually aware of which cities would be attacked. But he knew exactly when. And he would be damn sure that he's not in that city when that happens. Or he would be sure that he's standing far away. Yeah, so much. Huh? Of course, you can also argue it was a prudent thing to do. Because if Churchill died in 1940-41, what would have happened? Well, we don't know because sadly he didn't die. It's a pity he wasn't executed in 1900 already when he was captured by the Boers and should have been executed as a war criminal then. But he wasn't, sadly so. But anyway, he knew, and Coventry, they knew about that too, but they didn't want to betray the secrets. The code breaking and also the beams. They didn't want to betray that. What was it? Nickelbine? I think it's that. So anyway, so this hero Churchill of yours, why ain't no hero, there's nothing about him heroic. He basically made sure that he's not part of it. But guess what? He was praying since the 1950s. He was praying and warning about the bomber fleets are gonna come. But guess what, guys? The Luftwaffe never actually had the heavy bombers like the Lancaster, which came later, of course. They never had that. Or the Manchester, or it's Avro company. They never had that. No, they didn't. They were a tactical air force. They were never planning on bombing cities. In fact, they were extremely badly equipped to do so. Why? Because their pilots in the first place were single-seat pilots, and fighter pilots couldn't navigate. It wasn't part of their training to be able to fly at night and navigate. For RAF was. That made a huge difference. And they were short-ranged, so they were not designed to cross the channel and go and fight at over England for the Battle of Britain. That also snookered them quite a bit. And then they only had light fast bombers, 2 engines. What does this mean? What does this mean? It means that Churchill was talking shite even then, because he was taking money from where? The Zionists. Yeah. Why? How do I know this? I wrote many books, dozens of books. And I research what's in my books. I will challenge anybody to come and prove me wrong, what I write in my books. You might have a different view, because that's history, but that does not say I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. Churchill was bailed out by the Zionists more than twice in his life. Yeah. In 1938, around about there, he was losing his house, which was a hugely magnificent house, which no politician who's honest can actually afford. So he would be the same as Biden's son, make those shit little paintings and people would then buy it. It was actually just a scheme, bribery, man. That's just all it was. Allegedly, of course, on both of them. Biden's little drug addict son as well as on Churchill, allegedly. But, even a country like South Africa, that would be seen as corruption. So anyway, they paid for his house, they paid his debts off. When he became a prime minister, he got another gift. I think it was £5,000 or something from the Zionists. 5,000 pounds, not a lot of money today, but in those days it was really a shitload of money. And guess what? Once again, you have to look at how this was done. It wasn't done honestly, like, guys, here's the money, we're helping the guy, no problem. No, it goes through intermediaries, it goes to this guy, to go to this guy. Corruption, hello, why else would you do it like that? Does an honest man have something to hide? No. Did Jesus have something to hide? No. Did he speak openly everywhere? Yes. So why all these secret organizations, of which Churchill, of course, was one, as well as Roosevelt? Both were what? 53-degree Freemasons. What does that mean? Occultists, Satan worshippers. That's what that means. Don't believe me? Go and read Oath of Evil. Follow the links in that book and you will find all the evidence which you need. Fascinating. So this thing is playing off. And of course it is two Christian nations attacking each other there. Well, Satan is laughing still to it. 70 million Christians dead because of it. And then if you take the First World War, Christian nations attacking each other. Another 30 million, 40 million dead, 100 million Christians dead. Think Satan enjoy this? Of course he does. Goes back to Albert Pike, doesn't it? Yeah. Should think about that. So anyway, he wants to impress his mate there that side, so he decides he's going to attack the French fleet at Mers-el-Kébir. Now, to make the long story extremely short, I have about 20 pages here I can share with you, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to tell you the facts as I've got it. After Dunkirk and after Churchill went to France, and they had an agreement with each other that the one will not surrender without informing the other one, and will not surrender alone anyway. Britain then officially gave permission to France to come to an armistice and come to an agreement with the Germans, right? We had no other choice because the French were going to do it anyway, because the French are now shattered, because Rommel and the rest of the Panzer divisions are running amok. They can't stop them, even though we had more tanks and a better air force. But 1.4 million men less in the army. Why? Because of the casualties of the First World War. Yeah, those men who died, who didn't have children. That's what happened. And so anyway, whatever reason, France decides they're going to give up. They can't carry on like this. They're carrying the burden alone. Britain is sending a few squadrons of Hurricanes and nothing else. And Britain is definitely not going to send its defeated army over, and even if they do, what use do they have? Because they don't have heavy weapons. Can't do it. Which is one of the reasons which, of course, the Brits will tell you they could not have sent them through, despite the agreement to do so, because they would just be captured. And therefore, they kept them across the channel. Does that make military sense? Yes. You're still a coward, but yeah, it makes sense. Yes, I have to give him that. And so now Churchill is extremely worried about the naval side of things, because the French still have a powerful navy. In fact, the individual ships are more powerful than what the Royal Navy have. And should the very small German Navy combine with the French Navy and the Italian Navy who also now join forces, they will definitely overwhelm the Royal Navy. Combined, the Royal Navy can't stop them, since they're not the chosen, And so that will mean that Britain is cut off from the Big Daddy. And that means that the convoys will not get through, and that means we're also cut off from their empire, which they merely reigned for 100 years. And then that's the end of Britain. Sie sprachen Sie Deutsch, huh? Go back to your royal family. Start speaking a bit Dutch. Yeah. So that's his fear. And that's the reason which he gives. So he orders the fleet in the Mediterranean that they have to make the French fleet surrender. Yeah, they basically have to give him an ultimatum. Now, they say that there was also an agreement from the French that they will never allow the French fleet to fall under German hands. They would rather scuttle the ships or move them over to the French West Indies in the Caribbean. Where Trump now is the new pirates, just shooting out boats which they say are drug runners. No evidence, no attempt to make arrest, no attempt to search for boats, no attempts to do anything like that. No, we just kill them. Yeah, how nice. Imagine if I'm still in the apartheid police and I walk down the street and I see, there's a car going past. Man, I think there's drugs in that car. Yeah, let me shoot it out and kill everybody inside. Yeah, and especially they're not white, whatever they are. Yeah. You think I could have gotten away with it? You're an idiot if you think that. I would have been up for murder within seconds, and I would have been hanged. Yeah. It's a crime. It's piracy, and piracy is dealt with a death penalty. But since it's a mighty second beast of the Bible who's doing it, everybody, listen to Americans talking here on the beach. Say again, thank God there's not a lot of very fat asses here, but they're welcome to. And they, we showed them. Committing war crimes is not showing anybody. Really, I assure you, if China starts doing that, or Russia starts doing that, or South Africa starts doing that, you will be up in arms. Oh no, you would want to declare war. Huh? What does that mean? Let me explain to you in proper terms, which you might understand, because your reading capabilities, and also came out in my books, are so low that sometimes I have to speak here like I would speak to a 14-year-old child, because that is where 90% of Americans' reading ability is. Not my statistics, your statistics. I'll show it for you here. So let me explain something to you. Let me be in your level here, because I have postgraduate degrees in law. Let me explain it to you in ways you can understand. One law for you, one law for me. Fuck all for you. I do what I want. In other words, the law of the jungle. We don't care about we don't care about international law at all, because nobody is sending ships to go and protect those people. But I guarantee you, go and try it in another country. Go. I want to see what happens to you, because I know what's going to happen to you. Yeah, I know exactly. So anyway, so at Mers-el-Kébir, which is in Algeria, there's a couple of French ships lying there, a squadron. heavy ships were lying at anchor, we're at peace. In other words, we haven't raised steam. We just have enough going to, keep electricity going, but they're in no way capable of defending themselves. Okay, so anyway, there is a British fleet in the Mediterranean under the command, I think, of Admiral Somerville, but I stand to be corrected, speaking glitchy of memory. And he's now going to approach the French fleet at Mers-el-Kébir and basically give him an ultimatum to do certain things. Now, the order which he got from Churchill, and according to Churchill, he said the war cabinet never hesitated. They were all supporting him, which is bullshit. There's a lot of them who were not actually supporting him at all. But that was part of his cabinet, of his cover-up, which he said in 1949. We said it was a hateful decision, the most unnatural and painful which I have ever been concerned. It recalled the episode of the destruction of a Danish fleet in Copenhagen harbor by Nelson in 1801. It was a Greek tragedy, but no act was ever more necessary for the life of Britain and all that depended on it. Bullshit. Bullshit. What you see here is cover up 1949. Now it's coming out. The bullshit's coming out. And basically what Churchill is now invoked the name of Nelson. Lord Nelson, a great British hero. So I acted the same as Nelson, So how can you blame me? You know what, if you have two brain cells, you can actually see through the bullshit. But anyway, so we go to Mers-el-Kébir and these ships are lying there, but they are anchored. And they are in no way a threat, in no way they can defend themselves. And of course, the French are not going to just take any nonsense from the Brits anyway, because they don't really like the Brits that much, which makes them good people. And besides that, they are neutral, man. They've got nothing to do with this war anymore. It's not their problem, and they already have orders from a French Admiral Darlan, which was murdered by Churchill, so they say, cannot be proven, of course. The same as General Sikorsky of the Three Poles, also murdered by Churchill, cannot be proven, of course, but I do discuss it in my books. Later during the war, where they suddenly either had an aircraft accident, like Sikorsky, or, suddenly some lone gunman come and shoot Darlan dead. Interesting, these things, very interesting. And of course, Sikorsky had to do with a massacre at Katrine Forest, which I also speak about in the books. But anyway, this Admiral Somerville is now there. Force H is a powerful squadron, and he basically says to Vice Admiral Marcel Bruno Gensol, he says the following, he says to him, you sail with us and continue to fight for victory against the Germans and Italians. The second thing he said to him is, sail with reduced crews under our control to a British port. The reduced crews will then be repatriated. We will restore your ships to France at the conclusion of the war or pay full compensations if they are damaged. 3. Alternatively, if you feel bound to stipulate that your ship should not be used against Germans or Italians, and this would break the armistice, then sail them with us to reduce crews to some French port in the West Indies, where's the Caribbean thing coming, where they will be demilitarized by us to our satisfaction or perhaps entrusted to the United States of America. And then comes the threat. If you refuse these fair offers, now interesting is the word fair, not like this offers. Guys, you know what? I'm still an attorney at heart. I read these things and I read between the lines. Look at it. Look how they cover for themselves. If you refuse these fair offers, I must with a profound regret, such a British word, require you to sink your ships within 6 hours. So now they want the French Admiral to scuttle his own ships. Finally, failing the above, I have orders from His Majesty's government to use whatever force may be necessary to prevent your ships from falling into German or Italian hands. There you go. That's the ultimatum. Basically, he's saying to the French Admiral, fuck you, you come with us or we're going to sink you. Will that work with a French naval officer? Will it work with an American naval officer? Will that work with a British naval officer? Or will it work with a South African naval officer? The answer is flip, no. These people don't take kindly to that. They do not take kindly to that. It's not the way to do it. It's never going to happen. It's never going to be settled like that. But they tried. The Somerville actually really tried. They actually sent a good friend of a French admiral who used to be with French, or with the British embassy in France, in Paris, used to be the naval attaché. He knows the guy. He actually arrived there to try and talk sense into him. But of course, the French admiral is not going to take orders from him. Friendship doesn't enter this. For him, it is all about, what does my government tell me to do? And the government says to him, no, you will not surrender, and you will not listen to these people. So now, of course, back in England, of course, Churchill is now anxiously awaiting what's going to happen. And in his memoirs, which is bullshit from a historical viewpoint, this is now Churchill, this is a bunch of shit to make him look better, but very well written, I have to say, well written. He says that there was a manifest emotion at the prospect of opening fire on those who had so lately been our comrades. But there was also no weakening in the resolve of the war cabinet. So anyway, the French admiral, he sends an order or he contacts the French admiralty. He says there's an English force composed of 3 battleships, aircraft carrier, cruisers and destroyers before Iran, and they sent me an ultimatum. Sink your ships, 6-hour time limit, or we will constrain you, or do so by force. And then he says, my reply was, French ships will answer force with force. There you go. There you go. And what he does then is he starts ordering his ships to raise steam, which means he's starting getting them ready to sail out, to fight. And of course, the British can see that. They can see that what's happening, they understand what's happening. And they're not going to allow this. Because once those ships have freedom of maneuver, and they can get out of harbours and they can turn themselves around to face the Brits on the broadside, cross their T, then they can hammer them, because they got the guns to do so. Sadly, there's no French Air Force to sink the British ships outside the harbour. That will never happen again, by the way. I spoke to several naval officers of the French Navy, good friends of mine, in the old days, and they said they learned that lesson. It's either missiles, or it is French Air Force, or it is both. They will never allow the Brits to come close to their harbours again and to do that to them. But anyway, so this is now set for a Greek tragedy, as that idiot has said. And it goes on, and Somerville is getting pressured here from London, because this imbecile of a Churchill wants this done. And he receives a message which says, settle matters quickly, or you will have reinforcements to deal with, reinforcements on the French side now. Now, he was also scared, as the Somerville, he had to fear that the Italian Navy might arrive and get him from behind. Now, all right, and the British were now lying outside that harbour for 11 hours, basically stationary, going up and down, up and down. So they're very fantastic targets. If the French can get their submarines there from somewhere else, so the Italians can approach them, they can seriously cause trouble. And so he sent a final message towards the French admiral, which says, if none of the British proposals are accepted by 17:30, that's 5:30 in the afternoon, British summertime, it will be necessary to sink your ships. Now, at this stage, this Captain Holland, strange name for a British naval officer, the former military attaché, who is now there to negotiate with his friend, the French Admiral Gesson. He's still on the French ships. Now, what I would have done is, and many of you, I hope, would take that guy and put him in chains at the bottom of that ship. Yeah. That exactly, by the way, is what happened when Italian Navy divers attacked, I think in Alexandra Harbour, where they attacked some ships there and they got captured. And the captains of battleships, and they put them down into the harbour, into the hull of a ship, so that they could drown when the ship goes down. Yeah, that's what they did. The bombs did explode and the ship did go down, but it lay on the battleship, it lay on the bottom, so you couldn't really see it. I discussed that in another book, Codename Wrangler. You can go and find out about it. And, well, I suppose that's one of the things you can do. But what did the French Navy Admiral do? No, he had a bit more honor than that, He's perhaps, I don't know. I definitely would have done it differently. I would have taken this naval captain of the Royal Navy. I would have taken him to the bottom and make sure he drowns. But he didn't. He actually told him to piss off. And so he was told to go. And as he left, Captain Holland of the Royal Navy, the French sailors gave him the full honors. In other words, they stood there, they knew those guys betrayed him, they knew the Royal Navy is going to open fire on him, they let him go to live, they salute him, get rid of him, in the correct military tradition. Yeah, I can tell you guys, as I said here, I've got, what do you call it, Hoendervleis, got bombs. Why? I see the honor in this. I really see the honor. Well, I see absolutely F-all in the British Navy. And I see even less in Churchill. Yeah, so that's what they did. So this guy leaves. And as they leave with their destroyer, they start dropping mines in the entrance of the harbour so that the French cannot escape. Why the French didn't blow their destroyer, which is a small ship, out of the water right there, I don't know. I would have done it. Definitely, I would have caused as much damage as I could. Anyway, the French admiral then goes to his bridge of the battleship Dunkirk, and he says, I've done everything to gain time, now it's finished. He knows it's finished. So, Somerville, on the other side of Force H of the Royal Navy, he's still hoping to see that they surrender, but the French is not surrendering. They don't even have white flags, by the way, despite what you think. And it's only the French tricolor, the French flag, which is flying. And at 5 to 6, at 17:55, he ordered open fire. And HMS Hood sunk later with a lot of loss of life. At about 17,500 yards away, started shooting. There you go. Started shooting full salvos. Now again, the French are sitting ducks. They can't defend themselves. They haven't raised enough steam to get out. They're lying like this. So their forward-looking guns can't fire backwards. And they only have very limited ways of shooting back. But of course, the French admiral immediately opened fire also. So it's a bridge for starters. Once again, I take you back to who bombed Berlin first? 3 times before London got bombed? Yeah, Royal Air Force. On whose command? Churchill. Okay, there you go. Did Churchill order that the Red Cross planes of the Luftwaffe be shot down when they were rescuing downed Luftwaffe and RAF pilots in the channel? Did he order that? Yes, it's one of his war crimes. Go and listen to that episode. Read my books. You will find out things you really didn't know. Yeah, that is Winston Churchill. Fucking war crime always. That's all he is. So anyway, Jensel is ordering them to fight back, and he sends a short message just to say in action against the British force. Anyway, at the end of the day, the second British salvo, so within minutes, Britannia, struggle to say that name. Anyway, the ship is hit as he's trying to cast off from the jetty, and it's exploded. She sank in 2 minutes. 977 French sailors died immediately, within 5 minutes. Dunkirk hit 4 times. Electrical system out. Crews keep on fighting. They're now turning these heavy, many tons of guns by hand, and start shooting. The province is hit by the stern by a 15-inch shell, and so She says on the way out, the captain thinks he might sink in the entrance of a harbour, blocking the ship, so he beaches the ship. He goes deliberately to the left, and he just gets that the harbour entrance is open for them to escape. So this has gone on for 9 minutes before it ends. So in that 9 minutes, 1,200 and about 96, say about 1,300 French sailors are now dead. Yeah, that's where you are. And a few days later, of course, France broke off all diplomatic relations with Britain. They ordered the French Air Force to bomb Gibraltar. There were numerous incidents, more than 70 incidents, which I know about, where the French actually now attacked the Brits. But they're doing it half-heartedly. They were really not trying to hurt them. These bombing raids on Gibraltar, they would bomb the ocean in front of it. Why? Because they still have a sense of honor. They still like, well, we don't like you Brits, but we dislike the Germans even more. And we used to be, allies. And so we try not to hurt. Yeah. At the same time, of course, the Brits are storming French naval ships, including the biggest submarine in the world, the Suku, at that stage, storming these ships in British harbours, taking them by force. Several Brits die in the process. And Churchill reported to Parliament, he says in his 1949 books which he wrote, he says that he felt the whole approval of Parliament behind him, not merely his Labour members. He says that the elimination of the French Navy as an important factor, almost at a single stroke by violent action, produced a profound impression on every country. Listen closely to what he says. Here was this Britain which so many had counted down and out, which strangers had supposed to be quivering on the brink of surrender to the mighty power arranged against her, striking ruthlessly at the dearest friends of yesterday and securing her, for a while, to herself, the undisputed command of the sea. It was made plain that the British War Cabinet feared nothing and would stop at nothing. Okay, so that's what he says. That's his official reason. Now let's look at the truth here. Admiral Somerville, who was the commander of Force H, who attacked it, and said the following: "It was the biggest political blunder of modern times and will rouse the whole world against us. We all feel thoroughly ashamed." Yeah, you should be thoroughly ashamed. And why did he do it? Well, privately, what did Churchill say in private? And I've got the evidence of this. It's in Codename Caribbean. He said, this attack on Mers-el-Kébir had absolutely all to do with the reasons he gave in Parliament. This action, he said, was meant for high government circles in the United States. So after that, he says, there were no more talk of Britain giving in. Yeah. And because of that, of course, Britain, you will now receive 50 destroyers from American Navy, and they also Lend-Lease came in. Okay. Now tell me, you Brits, since you're such clever people, tell me how many of those 50 destroyers which you got, how many of them worked? How many of them were escorting your convoys? Tell me, want to know. Not one. Not even one. The closest you came to actually using these destroyers when you attacked Saint-Nazaire, and you took the old USS Buchanan, and you made it look like a German destroyer, and you sailed it into Saint-Nazaire on the raid on the docks. Yeah, that's what you did. The Normandy docks. Normandy here refers to the ship Normandy as well. You know, the one we suddenly burnt out in New York Harbor. Yeah, you know, we were forerunners of the CIA, the OSS. We were busy there with the mafia controlling the harbor. Yeah, we know about these things, by the way. There's very little we don't know, actually. And the rest of them were never used. But nowhere will you ever learn about this in history, that was a useless gift. You will just see that, oh, wow, look, they gave us 50 destroyers. Wow, look at the success. No, you got fuck all, to be honest. You got nothing. You couldn't use those destroyers. We were so screwed. Totally screwed. And the US Navy then ordered new ones. And at that stage, the US Navy could actually build. Where America actually could build ships. Today, well, yeah, I just read the other day. Yeah, China can build 258 ships for every one you can build. Hmm? 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 One for you, 258 for the others. Must I talk to like a 14-year-old child to you again? Yeah? You understand what I say to you? Let's say 5 of your ships are sunk. Work out how many ships, how quickly 5 Chinese ships can be replaced. And how long it's going to take you to replace 5. Yeah, wake up. Wake up. You don't have industrial might to start big wars. But you will try. Whatever, whatever. And it's even more interesting because, as I say, the codename Caribbean is that on 27 November 1942, the Nazis actually attempted to capture the remaining French fleet at a major naval base in Toulon, which they called it Operation Anton. Now, Anton in Russian, by the way, I think means donkey or something like that. And by this time, I occupied France completely. And what happened? What happened? When the Germans arrived to take this fleet lying there at Toulon, what happened? The French Navy sank their own ships. They scuttled it. In other words, what they said in 1940 to this imbecile of Churchill, we're going to not allow anybody to take our ships. They did. Who's the honourable party here? I ask you. Who's the guys who actually kept their word? Huh? Who? Yeah, not you, Brits. Not you. No, you didn't. No, not of course. So not a single ship was actually grabbed by the Nazis. And this had to do with Operation Torch, where the Americans and the Brits and everybody involved there, whatever. I write about that in my books as well. Where they attacked North Africa, and Americans had to learn that they ain't as good as they think they were. Catherine Pass, and people like Eisenhower came to the forefront. Other generals, some failed, some didn't. Patton became quite famous, God knows why, because he wasn't a good general at all. He was a tactical level general, nothing more, nothing less. But that we can talk about too, if we really want to. But the fact of the matter is, Darwin then wrote to the Prime Minister of England, that is the Right Honourable Idiot Winston Churchill, and he said, he reminded him, and he said, Prime Minister, you said to me, I hope you will never surrender the fleet. And I replied, there is no question of doing so. It seems to me, this is Darwin speaking, you did not believe my word. No, you didn't take the word of the French naval officers. No, you didn't. Of course you didn't. The destruction of the fleet at Toulon just proved that I was right. Yeah. And then a few months later, Admiral of the French fleet, Jean Darwin, also by that time a minister in the Vichy government, which doesn't make him a Nazi, was murdered. Yeah. Okay, so that's the story, guys, of what happened at Mers-el-Kébir. It's a shameful bloody thing. And in these other books, which I told you about, which I found at a farmhouse, which was written at the time, there is an entire historical document at page 1094, it seems, and 95. And in it, and I'll show you copies of it, they are trying to explain this now. And what they say is, how Britain secured the French fleet. Secured. Again, you have to listen very, very closely in the wording used. It's the same as we see in modern times. Russia didn't invade Ukraine just like that. It was a full-scale invasion, even though we used 120,000 men. Very fascinating. Full scale. Yeah. So Britain did not destroy the French fleet. No, they secured it. It's for your own good. It's for your own good. It was a unanimous decision. No, it flippin' wasn't. It came out later. It really wasn't. And then they go on and they go on, and the cover-up just go on. And then they say the British were forced to open fire. They were forced. In other words, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I was forced to do it. Has anything changed since then? The answer is no. No. We're going to lie off Venezuela as we speak here. Until Venezuela actually get fed up with us and attack us, or we will create incidents until they attack us, and then we were forced to attack you. 9/11. Why did 9/11 take place? So why? What did Bin Laden say? He wrote a letter to you people, and he explained it. It came out about a year ago on TikTok, and you immediately banned it. When he wrote to you just after 9/11 to explain why he did it, you banned that too. Why? Why did you do it? Well, but you're so scared. What so? Why? Because he said, you know what, I did that because you are putting your troops, your infidel troops and things there in Saudi, in the holy places. We don't want you there. We don't want you there. And we don't like your support for Israel either. Yeah. And that's why we attacked you. Okay. It should never have happened. It should never have happened. Well, I'm not saying it's right. Don't misunderstand me. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't put words in my mouth. But the fact of the matter is, that is the way the West do things. That is how the second beast actually acts. That is the American way. We're going to look for trouble until such time that you get punched, and then you attack back, and then you cry wolf, and then you say, oh, look at this, I was attacked, I can't help myself, I'm acting in self-defense. Huh? You're acting in self-defense? Yeah, of course. Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, well, anyway. Yeah, we agree. Of course you do. Yeah, anyway. So right from the beginning, they started using these words, which they put in, the betrayal and surrender, and it is all propaganda bullshit, guys. It's like I said to you in history, there's two sides. I just given you a French version, which many of you wouldn't not have known, and I hope you've learned something from it. Who's right? Who's wrong? Man, it stays a damn tragedy. It should never have happened. It's shameful. Absolutely, the Admiral Somerville is 100% correct. Absolutely shameful. Absolutely a war crime which Churchill committed without reason. Why? 1942, too long, as Admiral Darlan said. I gave you my word. I kept my word. The ships are now scuttled. They have not fallen. That's the end of the story. Look at the facts. Historically, did the French Navy join the fascists? Did they join Italy? Did they join Germany? No, they did not. So Churchill was wrong on every flippant presumption he had. And in his private talks, he said this was done to impress the US. No other reason. 1,300 French sailors dead to impress the second beast of the Bible. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. That is what Churchill is. Right. Let's go. Let's carry on with whatever we were doing. God bless. Thank you for listening. The books are available at Amazon in hardcover, softcover, audio, Kindle, never in Apple. Not explaining why again. If you want to know more, if you want to hear about such historical things, read the books. I'm sure you will learn something. And always remember, we link things with what happens today. It's warnings. Those books are not just books. They are warnings. They are there to educate. So God bless until we meet again.